Hello. I think I'm going to just start off. Today is 4 years ago. 4 years ago today, or actually tomorrow on October 17th. 4 years ago, we lost our two children. We didn't just lose them, though, they were brutally murdered. Noah, 7 years old, and Sophia, age 5, by their older brother while they were sleeping. And I've been feeling very compelled to share our story, share my grief for the last 4 years, and onward bound, especially coming through this pandemic. You know, there's so much loss, so much grief going on. Love, loss, grief, and sorrow. And so thought it was only fitting that I would come today to the cemetery, to where we have buried Noah and Sophia, and start this video. And I'd love for you to be a part of the journey and come with us, come along with me, and maybe my dark walk can help encourage somebody else's dark walk, because we all have a story of loss in one form or fashion. 4 years later, I go to work, but I'm not there. I'm tired. My brain is extremely foggy. I'm on autopilot most of the time. At home too. Work is weird. Everything is weird. Everything is weird. The loss of our children impacts every area of my life. Our jobs are anything but business as usual. Grief is exhausting. It's exhausting. I'm tired. Our oldest son, who committed this horrible crime, Malik, is in prison. 96 years he was sentenced to prison. I think I'm going to share with what I wrote. There was a letter I wrote to Malik when he was sentenced, and I stood up in court and read it. And I've had a lot of people ask me, about this and about Malik and so on. And look at me, I'm not even ready. I thought I had it with me, but I don't think this is it. Maybe this is. I'm sorry. I did find it. And this was a letter that I wrote and that I stood up in prison and read. And so I think I'd just like to share it now. Maybe it might help. I'm all over the place. I have a lot to share, I feel like, but obviously need to do it in doses. And just wanted to be able to share the road that I'm on right now of healing and forgiveness. A road that no mother and father ever imagined that they would have to be on. A road to even try to begin to think about forgiving your son who murdered 2 of your children. We had 5 children, and now 2. It's a lot. It's a lot. Finding a way to grieve, to be honest, still meet job expectations. It's challenging. We're all so different. All our losses are unique. I wrote a bunch of stuff down, so as I look down and look up, just bear with me, friends and people, as you're listening. Just be aware that I'm hurting, no matter how I might appear. Loss alters friendships. Some may evaporate, but others have thrived and deepened with me. And I bet some of you have experienced that as well, in your grief and in your loss. Friendships change. Our hearts are shattered, but yet we still can feel the love and support from our family and friends. A person who's lost a child will never feel the same, will never be the same. It would be nice if our friends understood that, but if we don't understand it, how can you? Yet there is one friend who understands perfectly. Jesus. He knows. He knows. I don't know about you, but in grief, I can't seem to focus. My concentration is gone. Grief takes up a large amount of mental and emotional space in your brain, a lot of it. It's exhausting, consumes tremendous amounts of energy. But I've been learning in these last 4 years that that's natural and common, actually, is what people have been saying to me. What I've learned. No parent should ever be a part of this Olympic club. The rigorous training, this far exceeds those in the real world Olympics, I can tell you that. There's no retiring. There's injuries for sure, yet even though those injuries, they don't remove us from the club. We don't get to sit out. I experience shock, sadness, anger, fear, anxiety, depression, numbness, dullness, rage, guilt, shame, regret, jealousy, rebellion, bitterness. Do any of you guys feel any of those? Losing 2 children, it's a mentally shaking experience. Certain images are just burned into my consciousness of their death, nightmares, our sleep's disturbed, or it's just gone altogether. Some of us are afraid to close our eyes. We've seen enough. We don't want to see anymore. Our hearts have been shattered. We lay in pieces all over the floor like Humpty Dumpty. Probably revealing my age even with that phrase. I know that, you just know that no one and nothing can put you back together the way you were before. It's impossible. Part of me is missing now. Part of me is missing. And my heart needs to make sense of this. My mind definitely searches frantically for a reason for the loss. Malik is to blame, my own son. I just feel like I'm in the presence of death every day. Grief is part of the air I breathe. Do you get that? Does anyone get that? It's like part of the air I breathe, I believe God does know my pain. And then more than this, I believe He feels it. I do. I believe He created us in His image. So therefore which means we're all priceless, eternal value. We're designed for relationships, to love and be loved. We're designed for that. We don't do separation well. Our hearts break and shatter. God knows this. He walks with me in the valley of the shadow of death. Though much of the time I'm unaware of His presence. Unaware. This healing process, I think we all want to heal in grief. But we just don't know how. And then there's some days we don't want to heal. They're not mutually exclusive. We grieve and we want to heal, and grieve and then we want to heal, and back and forth. And then we've got this Jesus character. The Bible declares Jesus to be God, who has taken on human flesh. So He came among us, walked among us, experienced joy, delight, love, that quality relationships bring us, He also tasted the ugliness of injustice, deception, manipulation, rejection, betrayal, abuse, torture, and violent death. Violent. No one truly understood Him. He knows about loneliness. He's very well acquainted with grief. I talked about this at my mom's funeral. In 4 years, I lost 2 children to violent murder, violent death. lost my mother and my father. My mother lived with us for the last 3.5 years. My mother lived with us when this horrible death occurred. And I just lost my mother in December of 2020, heart failure. And then my father, literally 3 months later, April of 2021. It's hard. And that's an understatement. Excuse me, but so I do think about, if Jesus is God and this human flesh, believing he rose from the dead, it's not a stretch for me. Okay. So rather it's very plausible, natural, normal for me. I believe he conquered death to offer me something better than disappointment, pain, frustration, and the loss of this world. I think he still conquers death every day in my life and in the life of my family members, the people I love, and in yours. Jesus knows. He knows grief. And he knows me. And he knows you. He shares my loneliness. I believe that. This companion has made all the difference for me. For me. And I believe he can make all the difference for you. And it's been a step-by-step process for me. Sometimes I feel like I revisit my relationship back again. Start over every morning sometimes. The Lord wakes me up every morning, 3, 4 a.m. He brings the right people in my life at the right time and loves me through them. His presence is constant. He reminds me that this life, it's not all there is. Death has been conquered. Death has been conquered. I still have questions. I have doubts. Periodically, even about his goodness. I get mad at him occasionally. But he accepts me where I am. He loves me. He gets it. Again, this is my story. My prayer is that it brings some comfort and hope to you in the midst of your current indescribable pain of losing a child, of losing somebody you just love so much. Even, there's a lot of loss in life besides just the loss of a child, which seems to be the greatest loss, I feel like, honestly. To bury 2 children at once, it's unthinkable, it's unimaginable. And it's something that you really just don't know until you walk through it. So you have to live through it. And I'm going to try my best through this, that I really feel that the Lord is leading me to do, and hoping that you'll, join me and be a part of this, and be a part of warriors of godly grit. Because we're all warriors. We do all have loss in our life. Loss of children and spouses and marriages and jobs and even homes, our health, friendships, money. Jesus knows too. And I believe he is with you and with me. He walks beside us in this valley of death. We do have all this in common. We're human. And we experience love and loss. We do. Defeat and victory, joy and happiness, despair and discouragement, doubt, unbelief, fear. I just felt the Lord asking me, do you want to be healed? Do you want to be healed, Melissa? So I'm going to try really quickly just to explain real fast. It's like these 2 miracles that the Lord performed in Jerusalem, only 2. And it's in John 5 and John 9, And in John 5, there's a man, Jesus sees this man lying here, John 5:6 says basically, when Jesus saw him lying there and learned that he had been in this condition for a long time, he asked him, "Do you want to get well?" I believe that most of us want to be healed, but how do we start to possibly heal when there's no resolution or restitution or reconciliation with Malik, who murdered our children, who has so devastatingly hurt us and murdered his own younger brother and sister? Yes, things most certainly have not felt fair in the last 4 years. 38 years that man was sick, lying there, paralyzed. Okay, can you just imagine? 38 years. And you know what's interesting to me is the man's response to Jesus. He says, "I can't, sir, for I have no one to put me into the pool when the water bubbles up. Someone else always gets ahead of me." Interesting how that man was more focused on what others needed to do, right? That he almost missed what Jesus was going to do for him. I've been there without a single word about the other people. Okay, you know, Jesus instructed him to get up. He said, Jesus instructed him to get up, pick up his mat and walk. Verse 9 says, at once the man was cured. The healing did not involve anyone but that sick, paralyzed man and Jesus. My healing will involve nobody else but me and Jesus. Your healing will involve no one else but you and the Lord. The second one was in John 9 with that blind man, the second miracle. You know, this disciple, I noticed that the disciples in this story, they really wanted to know whose actions caused this man's blindness. You know, because surely somebody was at fault, right? Somebody's to blame, right? Oh, but check it out though. Jesus, he blew that assumption clean out the park. You know, totally tore it to shreds. You know, I find that interesting. He did not place blame or shame on anyone. Did you notice that? He said it happened so that the works of God might be displayed in him. The works of God might be displayed in him. Jesus didn't make healing contingent on other people doing or owning anything. Jesus gave the instruction, the blind man obeyed, Jesus healed, the blind man moved forward. These miracles have shown me a new way to walk and showed me a new way to see. For me to move forward in my valley of death, see beyond my current deep darkness, it's between me and the Lord. I don't need to wait on others to do anything. I must just simply obey what I feel Christ Jesus is asking of me right now. Forgiveness, love, mercy, boldness, compassion. And God has given me a new way to walk. And God has given me a new way to see. And it's forgiveness and love and grief. And it's beautiful. My ability to heal, my desire to heal, it can't depend on anyone's choices but my own. I'm learning to separate my healing from Malik's choice. I have to stop waiting for things to feel right and fair, because that's not happening. That's not happening. Noah and Sophia, they are in heaven. Malik is in prison for 96 years. Excuse me. I've placed my healing in the hands of Jesus. My ability to heal cannot depend on Malik or others wanting my forgiveness either, but only my willingness to give it. We can heal. We can forgive. We can trust God. And none of these beautiful realities can be held hostage by somebody else. I'm not healed yet. I believe that the rest of my earthly life is the healing process and forgiveness process. Forgiveness and healing feel incredibly hard to choose most of the time. You know, it's God who gives me the strength to walk through the process. And forgiveness is such a heavy feeling in my soul. Excuse me. Forgiveness is possible, friends. It won't always feel possible, but it is. You know, I've probably taken up enough time. I think maybe next week when I do a video, I'll read the letter that I wrote in Word. So I hope I see you again next week. Thank you.